Welcome to the December last meeting of 2018. So we should be pretty busy this morning at our breakfast. First thing I'd like to see is guests.
Oh, I have guests here.
I
actually have two guests.
Okay.
My first guest is Mr. Ben Malin, who introduce himself. Hello, Ben.
Ben, why don't you just tell us something about yourself?
You want to know something about me? Let's see, I'm a furloughed government worker. Got 40 years, member of the Menorah. Good to meet all of you.
Does that mean you're non-essential?
Jeff Fields.
Hi, I'm Jeff Fields. I actually live in Mays Landing and member of Menorah, and I'm a retired insurance adjuster.
Good for you. What company?
I work for an independent adjusting company out of Mays. Work for a lot of different companies, mostly property work, condominiums, things like that. Welcome. GAB. I used to work for Rosen.
Thank you. Are there any other guests? Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Steiner. I'm retired and I live in Centennial Mills for just about a year now.
Welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Anybody else? Well, since you were the last one, would you like to make the motion?
You know that one?
We're going to use a bagel.
Okay.
Motion not coming. Now, gentlemen, wait, gentlemen. Before you go, hold it. Our guests go up first. Anybody who needs some assistance, please get up there first. And then the rest of you can attack. First person I'd like to call up, essentially, is Ed Stein, who's going to be making some presentations. He's also, again, going to be offering to sell long sleeve shirts, something that looks like this. Okay, they're a bargain and they're nice and warm. And also, if you need some mitzvah cards, he's willing to sell those things too, and he can explain that. So Ed. This or this? What would you like?
Good morning, everybody. Back a number of months ago, we had the Yom HaShoah remembrance at, not Emmanuel, I can't remember which synagogue. The one at TBS. And we collected some money, as you might remember if you were there, for the yellow candles. We solicited our membership for sponsorship of some of those yellow candles, and we had half a dozen of our members contribute toward either a case of candles or a half a case or a quarter of a case. And from the monies that we collected, less the cost of the candles, we have an overage. And we have Paula Jaffe here today. I think she's going to accept, right, Paula? If you would come up, we have a check in total for $250, which we're contributing to the JCRC.
In your midst. So thank you very much for that generous donation. Thank you to all of you. My name is Paula Jaffe. I'm the new Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council, an organization that you partner with. So I just have to thank you very much for that, for all that you do for the Jewish community. This is such valuable work. I thought I was coming here this morning and I wouldn't know a soul, but when you come home, you really come home, because I'm seeing friends at just about every table, and it's just been wonderful. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Jamaica, New York.
All right.
Yes? Is that Jamaica or is that New York? No way, really?
That's the F Street.
Hoover Avenue.
I live on Jewel Avenue.
Jewel Avenue, neighbors.
Right.
Okay.
Queens College. What high school?
Jamaica High.
I knew it.
Oh my God. You're probably related. I actually even have family in the room. Who knew? Right. Oh.
I'll let you finish going after I pull my house.
Okay, see, we're all mishpacha. This is great. So you can't. That's exactly right. That's right. So for those of you that are not familiar with what JCRC does, I'm going to give you the elevator pitch. JCRC is the voice of the Jewish Federation of Southern New Jersey on issues relating to public policy, social advocacy, and something near and dear to my heart, pro-Israel advocacy. We are comprised of two major departments, Bookmates, which is an interfaith literacy program for at-risk children, and the Rob Goodwin Holocaust Museum and Education Center, which I know is very close to you, and I know you're going to be hearing about the museum shortly. But we're also comprised of different departments. We have a very active interfaith committee that deals with members of other religions for the purpose of understanding coexistence, and we do a lot of cultural programming. We also have the Israel Advocacy Initiative, which becomes much more important, especially to me, and I would assume to most of you in this room, when we see how Israel is being treated in the media, and more importantly, for our children and our grandchildren, when they're going away to college. The assault that pro-Israel students get on college campuses these days is really appalling. So to try to remedy that, the Jewish Community Relations Council in 2019 is instituting a very aggressive teen advocacy, pro-Israel teen advocacy training. That's going to be like a little mini college course that will teach young people, give them the tools so they can be proud of being Jewish, they can be proud of being a Zionist, they can go away to college with the language and the tools to defend themselves when they are assaulted, when they are confronted with things like the IDF is baby killers or BDS is a good thing. So this is something that's going to, we hope, prepare our young people for a lifetime of pro-Israel advocacy. But we do a lot of other programming as well. You know that we're having our Middle East Institute coming up on March 17th this year. It is the 50th anniversary, and we're going to be honoring an old friend of yours, David Snyder, and his lovely wife Allison, very deserving people of that recognition. We're going to be doing a breakfast together, the law enforcement breakfast together in April, right? And of course, we'll be partnering again on Yom HaShoah. So I look forward to seeing you. I love working with Mike and with Ed and with Marty, and I know that the relationship moving forward is only going to grow stronger. So thank you so much again for all you do for the Jewish community and for inviting me here to be with you this morning.
Good morning again. I'd like to invite Jeff Green to come up. Jeff is representing the Goodwin Holocaust Museum. Goodwin, there's another name in there somewhere.
The Rob Goodwin Holocaust Museum and Education Center.
Okay. We at the law enforcement breakfast every year, and this was in March, I think, last March, we do a 50-50 collection. And the Holocaust Museum and the Hero Scholarship Fund are recipients of 50% each of the 50-50. And then the club adds to that. And at the breakfast, we presented them with a check for $250. And about a month ago, we presented them with the balance, another $250. So let's do the presentation, and then Jeff can tell us a little bit about the museum. He also has a very nice presentation. He's brought some objects.
Hey, when I came in this morning, I saw the check, and I just said, do I have to take that home in my trunk? And then I was assured I didn't have to. Gosh, I didn't know the big boss was going to be here today. She could have done both of these things. My name is Jeff Green. I am a docent at the museum, and I also train the docents and do some artifacts and things like that. I can't thank you enough for how much how well you have treated us over the years. This is not my first time in this room. I've been here with survivors and other speakers, and the generosity that you have shown us is it's just amazing. And I want you to know how much we really appreciate it. We're in the memory business. That's what we do. We have to get you to remember Zahar. We walk around with the little pins on our lapels. When you go to a survivor and you talk to them, and now we're talking to the kids who are in their late 80s and some other people in their 90s, and what do they want? They want to make sure that what happened is never forgotten, that what happened to them isn't forgotten. And that's what we pledge to them. That's why we do this. That's why it's important. I was talking to one gentleman that came up and looked at some of the artifacts, and he was upset, and he should have been. They're upsetting. They're upsetting. We have some artifacts in storage that you'll never see because we're not in the shock and awe business. We're in the remembrance business. But we use these things as tools. They're teaching tools. They're also tools to show people that this happened. We had two liberators that aren't with us anymore, unfortunately. One was a guy named Bill McCool, who is as Irish Catholic as he possibly could have been. Bill McCool was one of the scouts that found Ordruff. You've all seen the Life magazine piece where the pictures of Eisenhower looking down at the bodies with Bradley and Patton. I'm sure you've all seen that. But right behind Eisenhower is Bill McCool, because they let the scouts take the generals through, because they found the camp, and they just happened on it. They didn't know it was there. But when Bill McCool spoke, and this is not a Jewish man, but when Bill McCool would go to a group like this, he would tell you, if you ever meet anybody that says that this didn't happen, here's my phone number. And he would give you his phone number, and you tell them to call me because I was there and I saw it. That's what we do. And that is what you're helping us to do. And I want to thank you from all of us, all my friends and compatriots in the museum. And without you, it would be much more difficult. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you.
Thank you. As you can see, our group is very dedicated to the Jewish community, both monetarily and spiritually and physically. And we will be having various projects between now and June and July. And we will be asking that some of you help us out in doing things that might range from the pantry, which we're going to be putting up new shelving. And it's nothing that takes a lot of talent, but we'll need some assistance. We can't have the same guys always doing the same thing. Okay, on a lighter note now, we have a gentleman who's going to be coming up who's going to be talking about football. He's going to make some of us happy, but most of us not so happy. We gave a lot, and some of us are getting back very little. But some of us are getting back a lot, and I'm not one of them. Don?
Before I start on the fun stuff, I do want to thank the South Jersey Men's Club and the many individual members who, over the past month, have contacted me, phoned, called, visited, sent me cards. It was a difficult month for me. 3 weeks ago, I found out that I had cancer for the 4th time since 1990. But I had the surgery, and I'm here and I'm doing well, and I expect to prevail in the long term with it. But the support that I got is really, truly appreciated by me and my family.
Welcome back, Don.
On a happier note, we just concluded, I believe it's our 5th season of fantasy football. We had 12 teams, and what's interesting, you know, it does cost $125 per team to get in, but we spread the money and the winnings out. Of the 12 teams, the team that finished in 12th place, I gave a check today for $35. They won. So it's really spread out, and it goes up from there. But I do want to recognize the top 3 teams. I wish I was one of them, but I'm not. Showing that there's really no skill at all involved with this. Our 3rd place team happened to be owned by Mike Perloff and his son Ben. Mike, come on up, with an 8-8 record, 500 record. Mike and Ben are going to share $215. Share. Oh, yeah, I think Ben gets $1, Mike gets $214.
Thank you.
But very well deserved. And what's interesting, there were, I think, 5 or 6 teams that had the same record as Mike. But he prevailed because he did it when it counted in the playoffs. Our 2nd place finisher, I call them the rookies of the year because this was their first time in the league, and that was Barry and Dan. Their team was known as B&D, and they finished with 11-5 record. I think that was actually the highest and best record, but they only finished in 2nd place. But guys, come on up, and they're getting $275. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot.
And amazingly, our 1st place team won the whole thing with a record of only 9-7. But they did it at the right time, and Larry Klee and his sons Fred and Mark are the winners of the championship this year. Larry, if you want, I'll walk the check to you. See, Larry doesn't mind making the extra effort to get up here because he's going to be walking back with a check for $405. Congratulations, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say thank you. My granddaughter is going to use this money for her college when she gets older. She's only 3.
Great. And just so you know, thank you, Larry. And just so you know, we're looking for more teams. We could easily handle 4 or 5 more teams. If necessary, we could create a 2nd league. You don't have to, as you could see, have the skill. Actually, before I finish, if you're in the league, if you're an owner, can you just stand up so everybody gets an idea of how many people are? You see it. It's very diverse, and we have a lot of fun with it. So I encourage you to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Next month, I believe it's January 30th, is Super Sunday. And we historically have assisted with putting out the food so that the volunteers could be fed while they're doing their very important work. And Bob Greenberg has been our interface, and he'd like to give you a minimum presentation.
Correction.
January 27th,
27th.
which is when our meeting is, which means that all of you guys are volunteers. Because it's Super Sunday is here. We're going to be asked to help set up your breakfast, and we may have to pick up some food from the outside. We're not sure yet. We probably won't know until the meeting next month as far as all the things we'll need to do, but we'll need to know about pickups. So if there are people who may be available during the week of Super Sunday, we may need you to help pick up food and other items for Super Sunday. I have a sign-up sheet here, and I would appreciate it if you'd notate the sign-up sheet, since we have about 60 people here. I expect that we should get about at least 30 signatures. Anyway, the nice thing about Super Sunday is that it took us, Richie, last time, 40 minutes and we were done?
Not even, yeah.
Okay. It's not a big deal. It's not a hard job, but it's necessary. So, look forward next month. You're helping out with Super Sunday, and I will turn it back over to Marty.
What time? What time are volunteers?
Well, we normally get here at 8 o'clock in the morning for regular setup for breakfast. And right when we're done, usually about 8:30, we're usually done with the setup. Then we go downstairs to the kitchen downstairs. And usually by 9:15, we're back up here. It's not a hard thing. We put out bagels, we put out spread, we put out cakes and muffins, and we help them get the drinks ready. The staff here does the coffee and everything else, so we're not dealing with a whole lot of stuff. But it just needs a lot of hands, and a lot of hands will get it done quickly.
You got a pen for that thing?
Oh, I'm sure somebody over here has a pen.
Thank you, Bob.
And the last item before we present our speaker, Mike would like to do a 2-minute presentation. Mike Perloff, where are you? Wherever you are. You're here. There you are. This is a project that Mike has been working on, which is not related to our club, but there may be some people here who might be interested in helping Mike out with it.
Thanks, Marty. I've been doing some work in Philadelphia with homeless people, and there's I want to thank those of you who have purchased warm weather socks, warm socks for the cold weather. These guys wear their socks until they can't be worn anymore. I mean, week after week after week, not day after day, and other things. But something that they could use right now, believe it or not, if you have any thermal underwear of any kind, no matter how worn out or holes in it, it's better than sleeping outside with nothing. Or any kind of school bags or backpacks, any condition, as long as the zippers are closed. If you have them, see me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. We had probably between 10 and 15 people who went to Wynwood, Pennsylvania to attend the Middle Atlantic Region Man of the Year. There were probably 12, I think there were 12 synagogues plus us that were there, and it was a very, very quick presentation, and each synagogue had one candidate there, whether it be a rabbi, a gentleman who did whatever, but we were proud enough to have Dave Schwartz as our Man of the Year, and Dave was very worthy of this presentation. When you compare that with some of the people, what they got and why they were there, Dave was definitely the Man of the Year. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a real honor. The function over there was a buffet and the presentation, and I was honored to be part of that, and I appreciate your guys' support, and it's been a treat doing what I have over the years to provide the speakers, and today I brought a real doozy. You're going to enjoy it. I'm going to introduce Norman Rosen, and would like to tell you that his lovely wife Cynthia is here, son Keenan. And one of the things that I experience when I do this job is getting to meet some really neat people along the way. And Norman and Cynthia certainly are such as that. I've known them for a long time. I've been in Centennial Mill, where they are as well, for 12 or 14 years. And I've always said hello. My wife and Cynthia have been in shows together, and but it's been a hello. So I heard about their beautiful Judaica collection, and a few months ago I went to them and said, would you mind coming? And Norman said, as long as I make a lot of money. So I said, well, you're coming to the wrong place for that. But he's the one person who has donated to us, and I have a crisp bill in my pocket that I'm going to give the treasurer before I leave here today. So thank you very much for that. Today we have decided to do the evolution of Menorahs, and he has offered to come back in the future and do other segments of his collection. So thank you in advance for that as well. So with no further ado, you're one. Is that working?
Seems to be working. Yes? Good. All right. The Hanukkah menorah is an interesting phenomenon. It started back with the Maccabees at about 160 BC, and from then on had grown in its importance. Nowadays, they even have a holiday among the Christians called Christmas, which they copied from us, Hanukkah. The earliest Hanukkah menorah, if you want to call it that. Who's switching the pictures?
You're on.
Okay. This first picture that we're looking at here is a sample of 2 or 3 individual Hanukkah, not even Hanukkah, they're really oil lamps, really, and very prominent in the Middle East. They were used for every occasion. They were used to light the home, they were used at burial situations, and they were used ultimately as part of Hanukkah. You notice there's 2 parts to it. The wick is placed down here, the oil font is here, you fill it with oil, and by osmosis, you burn the wick over here. So I simply brought 2 or 3 different types, or took pictures of them. I didn't bring them because they are so common, and I'll show you some others in just a moment. If you go to the Middle East even today, and go to any of the places where they're doing digs, lo and behold, you'll find some of these little clay lamps. They began to use them for Hanukkah, and we know what happens for Hanukkah. We light 1 the first day, and then 2 all the way up to 8, and we have a shamus with it along to make it 9. So lo and behold, you'll have 9 lights for Hanukkah. But there was also the custom of everyone in the family lighting his own lights. So imagine you're lighting 9 lights ultimately, and if you have 6 or 8 kids along with you, and a mother and a father and a grandmother, you need a tabletop much bigger than the tiny tabletop I was given over here today. And so lo and behold, you might have 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 little lamps like that out on the tabletop. And obviously you have the natural hazard of fire. So lo and behold, along came some genius who switched to the next picture. Now if you look at this one, you'll see there's one major difference. Instead of having individual Hanukkah lights, they combined it in one. This is made of stone. And they combined it into one. And as you can see, there's 8 openings to the front plus the shamus behind it. And this was used and eliminated all of those of the lamp. So this was placed on a tabletop, gradually lighted 1 up to 9. And lo and behold, it was the next evolutionary step in the development of the Hanukkah lamp. This is another picture. This is another one of the same concept. The idea of having a stone, these are made of stone, a stone lamp with the openings, as you can see, across the front for the lights. And and lo and behold, that would be used as a Hanukkah light, as an advancement on the one we looked at in the first slide, where we saw that they were using individual oil lamps for each and every individual night. But this also was a little bit of an encumbrance. And so lo and behold, they went to the next step. Now this one is simply a large version of a stone menorah. Now there was a problem, because you see it today. If you light a Hanukkah lamp in your own home, it's there on a tabletop or wherever it might be. But if lo and behold you're doing it in a synagogue or before a group, obviously those little ones that are fit into your hand are too small, and so lo and behold, these larger versions like this were developed over time. And this is simply a stone, elaborate menorah with all the oil fonts up on top, and an animal or a fish or gargoyle caricature in front. Okay, now from here though, along came some genius who said, hey, wait a minute, why are we doing all these Hanukkah lights out on the tabletops? Now, what is not realized by a lot of us is that when the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem, and the Jews were forced to leave, a lot of them left from there and went to, of all places, to Italy. As a result, you don't think of Italy as being a large, major, or early Jewish settlement. Yet all the way from Sicily up the peninsula, all the way for maybe 1,000 years until the Inquisition in 1492, there were large Jewish communities there. And somebody hit upon a brilliant idea of making this lamp, which my son is holding for it. Walk a little closer. Let them take a look at it. You'll notice that there's a couple of differences. Number one, there's a hole in the center at the top. Why? So that this lamp can be hung somewhere. Instead of putting the Hanukkah lights on a tabletop, somebody hit on the idea of making them so that they can be put up on a wall, and therefore less obtrusive and less possible for burning in the light. So this is an Italian lamp, a replica of one probably from as early as the 14th century. You can see the oil fonts in the front, a decorative back piece, and then an inscription about Hanukkah, but all of it on a piece that can be hung from the wall, and it's out of the way and avoiding fires. But then lo and behold, that the one on the right there, Keenan. This is one small one that comes from Poland. It's maybe 300 years old. In Poland, of course, there was also a very large Jewish community. The Jewish community, when it spread through Europe after the Inquisition in Spain, went number one to Italy, number two to North Africa or Portugal, and number four into southern France. This was the lamp that was in Poland. Its major change compared to what we looked at before is it has little feet. If you look at it, there are little tiny feet to elevate it. Rather than have it flat on a tabletop, they added that one element to it. And the idea of these, the one we looked at previously and this one, in Italy, are very prominent. There are dozens and dozens of early samples. In fact, we were in Paris one day, and I had heard about a collector of Judea. Well, like any other person with a disease, you're happy to talk about it to other people. So I called him on the phone, Victor Klagsball, some kind of a multi-millionaire in business, as were many of these people. We went over to his home, and he shows us a Hanukkah lamp. I said, my God, that's amazing. I never saw one like this. I'm familiar with the books and so on. He says, you know where I got it? I said, no. He said, a man came into me one day and said, here, Victor, here's the lamp for you. He said, well, I can't accept it. Where'd you get it? He said, I dug it out of the Seine River. In the middle apparently is the river. In the mud at the bottom, he found this particular lamp, which has a motif of the phoenix, the bird that indicates eternal life and so on, or resurrection. And this fellow brought it to him. I've only seen that lamp twice. One in the museum at the at Temple Emmanuel in New York. They have a museum in the back, and they had that one there.
This is the other one in the picture.
You see this what we're looking at now. This is another example of the Italian menorahs. This one, as you can see, is rounded in shape, as opposed to the other, but still intended to be hung from the ceiling, hung from the wall, in order to be able to see it. But there was still another danger, big danger. You know that when you put a mezuzah up on your door, you do it on the doorpost of the right side. What you may not know or remember is, Dave, do me a favor. Give me the sort of glass one in the back. This one. That one with your left hand. Left, in the back. Right behind it.
Norm, what kind of oil? What kind of oil do you use?
I'm sorry.
What kind of oil?
Oil?
What kind of oil?
I don't know. I don't know what they would use in those days, but it would be something that was very common and very prominent, and it would be used. Now, no, not that.
Well, those are all
pictures.
Those are pictures, not a
Okay, it's not a face. Leave that. Give me the one with the glass in the back.
What's that, this?
That. Yes. Yes, go ahead, ask.
Would you give us some appraised values of what these things are, their prices? What value each menorah would be, even the ones that you don't have in your possession?
What value?
The values. What are the values?
Well, how much? How do I establish values?
Of course.
If you asked me to do it, I would say, what experience do I have with these particular lamps? Where have I seen it at auction? Where have I seen it in a museum? Where have I seen it in somebody's home? And I say to myself, I never saw this before. It must be a very valuable one, and I would put a price on it. I come to you with it and say, I want to sell it to you, and you'd laugh at me because you'd say, it's worth a tenth of that, not a hundredth of that. But it's sort of evolutionary. There used to be a lot of auctions on Judaica at the big auction houses. Sotheby's, which is the oldest and the biggest of them, had a lot of Jewish auctions. Christie's a lot, and then a number of the smaller houses.
I'm a little better at this.
So the price is usually something that is set by trade experience more than anything else. It so happens that in the last few years, the Judeo market is not as buoyant as it was previously, and so two things are happening. It's harder to establish a price, but the prices are really coming down rather than going up. Now, this piece that he has in his hand, we just looked at the Hanukkah menorahs that could be hung on the wall, and lo and behold, there was a problem. Because, as I said to you, your normal mezuzah would be hung on your doorpost of your house. But what they did in those days was they also hung your menorah on the opposite doorpost. So imagine a menorah hanging on your doorpost with the wind blowing, with people going in and out of the house low on. So they're about to burn all the houses down. Somebody hit on a bright idea of making a holder that Keenan has in his hand over there, wherein you would put your menorah within that holder, hang the holder on the wall, and that would avoid the danger, or some of the danger, of it burning. That particular one he has in his hand is a rusty old copy that came off a wall in Safad. I don't know how many of you who have been to Israel have gone to Safad, which is up in the Galilee, and it's the home of the mystics, the first Jews that came to Israel in the Middle Ages. I'm not going back to ancient times, but in the Middle Ages, would settle in Safad, and there's a whole history of the mystics, famous mystics who are there, and it's still a place where people go for observing certain holidays in the fall of the year. But in any case, somebody took that one and two other pieces off the wall of some house or synagogue or something, brought it to me, rusty, junky as it was. And if you look at that one, that's a pretty rusty piece. But that is one of those cases where one would hold the Hanukkah lamp within the case and avoid the fires. What you have up here now is another one of those three pieces that I had. This is a lamp. In the center of it is a tube for lighting, and there's a door in the front, which you see to the right. What would happen in those days, they didn't ask you too much about doing things. The shamans of the synagogue would go around door to door, knock on the doors, and say, synagogue, synagogue, you ready for chakras? And he told these people into waking up and coming to synagogue. So if they had their minion, even in a little obsolete town as was Safad. Next, where are we? This is a wash basin made out of, I don't know, tin or something. In the middle of it is a round piece that holds water, and before you go to synagogue, you're supposed to wash your hands. So lo and behold, it's Safad. Poor town that it was. Everybody made his own ritual object, or within the town they were made. And this is the third one of those three pieces that I bought at the time. But anyway, this is another one that we have there. Now, this is one more example of the Italian style. Again, the opening up on top, the fonts across the front. But here they have an elaborate backboard. They're decorating in the backboard and making it more elaborate than the perfectly plain ones that we saw before. This again is probably in that same age period, 14th century, 15th century, and so on. As I said, these Italian menorahs were among the earliest one of the metal menorahs after they gave up the clay ones that they were doing in Palestine. Where do we go from here? Okay, this is interesting. Keenan, you have this piece. If you look at this, first of all, it's very frail. And what happens is in the back piece, they punched out with some kind of a puncher a decoration. In this case, you see this, the 7-branch menorah and so on. Again, it could be hung on the wall, but it has one important difference from the others that we looked at. First of all, this is Dutch, comes from the Netherlands. Again, it's probably about 300 years old. And underneath it at the bottom, you notice there is another piece that we didn't have before. What they did over there was, since there were drippings from the oil fonts, they built a catcher, if you will, a bottom base wherein if there were drippings from the font, they would go into the bottom there and it wouldn't burn the house down. But this was a step forward in the development of the Hanukkah menorah, and this is the Dutch style. What do we have next? Oh, and you look at these two, and when you see them, you say, you know, sort of similar to those Italian ones. Where are they from? Well, guess what? As I said before, when the Jews fled Spain in the 1492 Inquisition, they went to basically four places. But one of the places, or two of the places they went was to North Africa. In fact, the Moroccan community at its peak, I mean, they claimed there was 600,000 Jews living there. I think it's probably closer to 3. They counted legs and arms rather than heads. But in any case, the one to the right, here, hold this thing, picture. The one to the right has a backboard all punched out again with the decoration of the menorah. It's an interesting piece because of how it came to me. When I was working in New York. And so what would happen in the morning is I would go to Minyan at the synagogue in the garment center. We were a group of about 10 or 15 after a while. Afterwards, we would go to breakfast together. And so I hit on the idea I'm talking about today. But what do we do there? We go to Minion, we say our prayers, we run off each in our own way, or maybe we go and have breakfast together. So one day, one of the fellows at the Minion, who is an officer at, I can't remember which is the stockbroker, had a big job there, calls me on the phone and says, can I come up to your office? Comes up to my office, and he brings me that Menorah from the right. I'll tell you how it differed from the others in a moment, but he brings it up to me, he said, this is for you. I said, I can't take that. It's a valuable, within the Judaic mode, it's a valuable piece, and it's not appropriate for me to take something like that from you. I said, you've got to have it. Now, the difference between this and the other ones is it has sideboards alongside of the center pieces, which don't show too well in this picture, are there, and what it does is it tends to serve as a reflector. Not that. No, we're not up to that yet. One of those where radiance. Yeah, don't you have one that looks like this? There are two of them. No. No, not that. That one, and then there's another one. See, this is, bring that closer. The one laying side, I think.
Oh, the one with the flapping pieces on the sides?
And then there's the other one.
The fold-up pieces.
Push out back. These two are two examples. You hear me, Mike? I want you to hear me after all. You've been listening to me for 50 years now, since you were a teenager. You see, turn around here and let me see what you look like there. Yeah. Now you notice the sideboards in this particular one, and they tend to serve as reflectors and tend to keep the oil within the framework. So you can see that the styles of the menorahs were developing within each country's needs and not necessarily completely along the same style. As you can see them as we go through them, you notice some of them are quite different from the others depending on the country. The material available to them and their financial needs. If they had no money in their pocket, you'll see what we come to next. That affected their menorah. Let's see. Oh, okay. Go back to the one you just showed. Now, by contrast, next. Who's changing picture? Which one do you want? Next. The next one. This. Hold it there. You can see that this one looks much more elaborate and quite different from the ones we just saw, which came from North Africa. This one is a German menorah, very late 19th century, made of silver, which of course the wealthier people of places like Germany could afford to have, rather than having one made out of brass or made out of some other material. Yeah. It has a number of differences from the others. Number one, it has feet. The feet are in the shape of an animal holding up the four corners of the menorah. And it has a cover over the oil font. As a protection, you would run the wicks out through the bottom, light the wicks, and all the oil goes within the little oil fonts covered over with a cover. Very well-known German piece, probably maybe 150 years older or so. They come on the market occasionally. They're well-known and well-regarded. Now, in the height of days, he asked the money question. I don't like to talk about money, but since we're here, this thing used to sell for about $10,000 for that piece. Now, who's changing the thing, David?
Yeah.
We're not up to that yet.
Which do you want?
Next.
Next.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, there are a bunch of other.
No, that's it.
Oh, that's it? Okay, well, then we'll just go from here by talking about some of the things on the table. We were talking here about a silver lamp and with some of the others, the pewter lamp. Not that. You can bring that over. This is just another example of the silver lamps. You can see the back is elaborate, the front is elaborate. It has feet to lean on. It's Central European, probably Austrian. Silver and so on in 19th century. Thanks. Now here we're going.
I have a question. When did they start using candles?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
When did they start using candles?
Candles?
Yes.
When? Leave it. It was evolutionary in a sense. Evolutionary. He asked me when they were starting to use candles. There was a time where they had Hanukkah lamps with an oil font, and covered over it was a lid with a hole in it for a candle. So it developed from the oil into the candle. I don't know an exact date, but these things were going on simultaneously. I mean, remember the Jewish communities in Europe were very, very diverse. They were spread out, and as a result, they developed their own style and as they came along. Now this one here, we looked at the picture up on the board there in silver. The one he has in his hand is made out of pewter. What is pewter? The poor man's silver. Those who couldn't afford silver used pewter. We have 2 or 3 examples here of pewter lamps that were elaborate and so on as they went along. Pewter usually came from a town in Germany called Horb, H-O-R-B. Horb was the center of pewter, and all the pewter things that seem to come out all seem to have centered in Horb. So you have another one like that? I have 2 or 3 I have to bring here because we simply pull things out of the case and pack some things in and let some things out. Let's see, what you got there?
That's it.
Okay, and you see this is another example of a pewter lamp. As the others, the backboard, the back piece is where the decoration would fall, but mostly it's different and simpler and less costly because it came from Horb, a place where they couldn't afford to make silver pieces. So you have the one that's up on the board, which is silver and very elaborate and very expensive, and lo and behold, you have pewter along with it. Okay, let's see what's next. Oh, there are no other pictures.
That one?
Which? It's up there? Well, you can leave it there. We'll come back to that.
The next one?
Yeah, I know. We don't have this one. We don't have the last slide there. You know what to do? Give me the wood one in the back.
That was the first one.
No. Put it up here. Thank you. Now, this is interesting. This is a menorah. Obviously, you can see it's standing so that it is more obvious and easier to see by the congregation. Shelmas is there in the front, made out of wood, carved. Where did it come from? Came from Palestine, 1890s. Now, if you can imagine what Palestine looked like in those days, it's a very primitive country. And we hear the stories about the cedars of Lebanon and so on. Well, in Jerusalem, because they didn't have silver, they didn't have pewter, they didn't have any of that, they used wood. And so this is one of many, many examples of wood ritual pieces that were made in Jerusalem area mostly in the latter part of the 19th century. This is what you can see from some distance. I don't know whose house it came out of. You know, it's funny. You're in this Judaica business, if you will, and things just come to you. I think it's sort of like, well, first of all, I call it a disease like malaria, because once you bought one or two pieces, you become addicted to them, and you keep looking to buy more and more. And after you find a piece or two, you quiet down a little bit, and the malaria attack passes, and then lo and behold, 2 or 3 months later, you're right back again, having to acquire another one. So this is Palestine, if you want to call it that, from 1890. The Jews who lived in Palestine at that time were desperately poor. They were living there mostly. They were living there mostly on tzedakah, on handouts. I had a friend of mine from Jerusalem who I met periodically in New York.
Years and times,
Well, this I said, this is about 1890. This friend of mine traveled the world. What was his job? The reason I was familiar with him was because he was a Judaica collector. I'd meet him in New York, Orthodox rabbi, and what was his job? He was going around the world collecting tzedakah money to support the yeshivot, the schools in Jerusalem, because these people couldn't really afford much of anything. So wood was one of the materials they used. I probably have a half a dozen different pieces of wood in one category of Judaism to another. And there you see that 1890 wooden carved lamp up on the top. What else have we got there? Yes.
We think that it would burn the houses.
You have to talk a little louder.
It would burn the houses down.
They could burn the houses down? Well, I don't know how they managed it there, but they were pretty poor people living there. And you know what is interesting, that is in the 1890s, a fellow that came along named Theodore Herzl. Theodore Herzl got the concept of political Zionism. Not only an Orthodox thing. If you talk to some of the religious sects like Satmar, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they're one of the more extreme of the sects of Jews today. They don't vote in the Israel election. They don't talk Hebrew. They don't handle the money. They won't do any of that. They believe that the state of Israel should come about how? Through an act of God. And if God doesn't bring it about, man can't do it. Herzl came along with the idea of political Zionism in the 1890s. And he predicted in Basel, Switzerland, the 1890s, hey, you know what? Within 50 years there'll be a Jewish state. Harry Truman recognized the Jewish state of Israel exactly 50 years later. He was there for 50 years. Now, I don't want to impose on the time, and as you can see, I only brought a few items along. I'm going to tell you one last story. And here it is. Our older son went to school in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Franklin Marshall College. He was a freshman at the college there, and we were talking, and I said, well, I'll come by and visit. I was a traveling salesman, and so by coincidence I happened to be in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is not that far away from Lancaster, except for one small problem. There's a snow blizzard going on. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. But since I had promised him I was going to be there, and he invited a friend or a roommate, Ed Stein, along with him, to come meet us to dinner, and there we were. I had to get to that restaurant, which I did, I mean, it took me forever to do it. Came through the snowbanks. I still remember to this day these big plate glass windows, completely surrounded with snow. I walk into the restaurant. The two of them were waiting for me, and I say, "Did you guys like Hanukkah lift tonight?" "It's Hanukkah." "Well, we didn't, but a lot of guys at the dormitory did," so on and so forth. I said, "Well, we've got to write and light Hanukkah lift." So they gave me the horse laugh. "You're going to light Hanukkah lift in this restaurant full of not too many Jews in Lancaster, and all the waiters wearing these white outfits, and the chefs these big high hats, and so on." And they said, "Ha ha ha," on the hit. So I pulled out of my pocket my little book. Okay, with decoration in the borders all around. And the laugh was on them, because when that piece comes back, he didn't let me have that. Who has it?
It's right behind you.
Let me have it, Dave. Because guess what? It's not a book at all. It's a Hanukkah menorah. It opens up into a menorah, falls out. There's room for the 8 candles, and there's room for the shamas. We put this on the table. I had candles in my pocket. We lit it up, and the entire restaurant in Lancaster, in the middle of the night, on a December night, in the middle of Hanukkah, had to know what was going on. And everyone was asking, and I told them what was going on. We're lighting lights for Hanukkah, and this is it. You have a question?
Yeah, and you touched upon it, but how are the terms menorah and Hanukkah related to it?
It's the same name.
Same thing?
Yeah, there's no difference. No difference. Yes?
Norman, I'm curious to know, did your interest start in Judaic...
Wait, I can't hear you. You have to say louder.
Did your interest start in Judaic menorahs from your love of Judaism, or was it a hobby? At what age did you start at this love of menorahs?
You know, you've got to remember that through the centuries, a lot of things are remembered, a lot of things are forgotten. So we know about the clay little pots that we started with at the beginning, which was their basic candle. And our first trip to Israel, we were up there in Caesarea, and we were digging around under the aqueduct, and lo and behold, we kept finding pieces of pottery, which included those little lamps.
When was
2,000 years.
When were you there?
When were you there?
When were you there? First time.
I don't know, Cynthia, when were you there? 1960 something. 68. She was there in 68. I had to go along with her. And so you find all these things buried in the sand. And you dig around and you find these old coins there. Now you don't find it anymore, but it's all overdug that they're not there anymore. Okay? But we know about the clay ones, and we know that the Italian ones later, as long as 10 centuries later, began to develop to hang on the wall. And we can see how, from a practical point of view, it made sense.
Thank you.
Okay. It made sense from a practical point of view to make these changes or additions to them in order for it to make it more relevant for the times. Now, I usually talk about this lamp just because 50 years ago, when my son was there in Franklin Marshall and so on, we were there in that restaurant, and I still remember it. But I remember it for other reasons. You see that we could be sitting here in a room in the JCC, and I pull out of my pocket a menorah. Guess what? If we have any sense, we as individuals would think about Jewish ritual and Jewish objects all of our lives. We tend to think maybe it's old-fashioned. You know, our grandkids, our great-grandkids, our children, maybe they're slipping away a little bit. But if you stop to think about it, when you do these Jewish ritual objects and bring it into your own homes and the homes of your families, it leaves its impression. It leaves its mark on all of them, And maybe before you know it, I have it right now. It just occurred to me. Yesterday we were supposed to visit one of our grandsons. And he said to me, can you give me a Havdalah lamp? And I give a ritual piece every now and then. A Havdalah lamp. He's asking me for a Havdalah lamp. I didn't even know he went to a synagogue. He's the president of a synagogue in Wilmington, Delaware right now. I never would have expected. I'm getting him a lamp. We were going through the books yesterday. I'll try and find something I can buy that'll be important enough to show, because obviously he has a little bit more Yiddishkeit than I thought he had before. Each of us have to fill our hearts with one of the greatest traditions there is in the world, and perpetuate it among all our family members and in the neighbors that we come. It's great to be a good golfer. It's great to be a fine tennis player. But remember one thing, you also have to be a mensch, and a mensch means be a Jew. Thank you very much for listening.
We'd like to present you a certificate of appreciation as a guest speaker. You're always welcome to come back here. We'll feed you. You gotta have it covered in advertising.
I'll go for it.
One more word for that. You have to pick the winning number, make somebody happy.
The winning amount is $50 today. There's 3 numbers.
Last 3 numbers are 066. Double baby. 066.
Anybody? Last 3 numbers, 066.
How you doing?
Wait, let's make sure we don't see. Were you sleeping?
I was sleeping. I'm going to give it back to the organization.
Very Bernie is donating the winnings to the organization.
Thank you.
Just one last thing. One last thing. Right after this meeting is concluded and we clean up everything, Don, wherever you are, there you are, just going to run a mini meeting about fantasy football to do a recap and take any suggestions for next year.